Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today to another Discover the State Library webinar that the South Carolina State Library is presenting. My name is Virginia Pierce, and excuse me, I'm not a person. And this is my colleague, Don Mullen, and we're both reference librarians here at the State Library. We also work together in the same department, Library Collections and Services. And just so you know, in the future, if you ever need anything, Don and I are two of the people that you might reach out to help answer questions, any kind of reference questions that you might have. Wanted to let you know today's session is going to be recorded, so it'll also be available later if you want to watch it again or share it with somebody. We put it on our YouTube page, and we also there's a live transcript, so you can do closed captioning, and there's a little ellipses there that you can enable that if you're interested in using it. Welcome to have your videos on. If you're not comfortable with that, no problem. I will try to keep all of us muted except Dawn while she's speaking, so there's no feedback or anything like that. But don't hesitate to unmute yourselves if you have a question or put something in the chat. Like I said, we'll be trying to monitor as we go along. And just wanted to share that, like I said, this is part of a series that we're doing, and it's going to be an ongoing series where we keep adding new programs to share what the State Library has and how to use our resources. So just we have diverse, rich collections here at the State Library, and we feel like one of the challenges is to let you know what's here and what you can come visit, what you can contact us for help on. One of the best resources that Dawn's going to talk about today is our historical legislation. And it's very extensive. She's going to tell you all about it. We'll be posting more sessions soon. We'll have one in October and probably in December on our genealogy. We have a lot of non-traditional genealogy resources here at the State Library. I'm going to give a talk on that. And then one of our colleagues is going to do one on preservation in libraries that we would love for y'all to attend. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, and I'm going to upload a handout in just a moment. Thank you.
Hey. Hello, everybody. Well, I guess it's not good morning. It's good afternoon because it's just afternoon. There is at various places in the chat, we'll be posting the slides for this presentation. What we'll be covering today is basically what we have in the State Library for legal research. Most of it would be historical research. We've got the Code of Laws, we've got the Acts and Joint Resolutions, we've got the House and Senate journals. We have them going back well over a century. So very interesting things that you can do to take a look at them, see what you can find. In addition to legal research, they're also really useful for just plain historical research. You know, what was going on during this time? What was, why did they pass this law? What was going on? And also useful for some family history research, especially for things like in town incorporations. You know, when was this town incorporated? Because for the most part, incorporations were handled by the General Assembly, and they ended up in the Acts and Joint Resolutions. So what I'm gonna do is the slides for the PowerPoint, yeah, we just posted them in the chat. You can download them from there. If you have any trouble downloading them later, we can always email them to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the presentation and we'll get started with all the really incredibly fun stuff that is available in our collection. Here, there we go. So what we've got in our collection for researching legislative resources. Again, it's primarily historical. If you're doing new stuff, most of that is available online, and there's various resources for that. But if you need to know about anything that happened even a few years ago, that's what our collection can help you with. So what resources that we do have here? What we're going to cover is the legislative resources that we have here at the State Library and what type of information you can get from them and how to conduct research using those resources and how to access them. And also at the very end of the class, we'll cover some online resources. More and more material is becoming available online. And there's less and less need in many cases to haul yourself off to the library and pull off all the books on the shelf so you can try to find some obscure little piece of information. And hopefully we'll be able to help you with that. So the three primary resources we have here for legislative research, and we have lots of adjunct materials as well, but the three primary resources and what we'll be covering today are the South Carolina, the Acts and Joint Resolutions, the Code of Laws, and also the House and Senate journals. And little side, now put little trivia bits off to a little side here. And something that's very interesting that a lot of people don't think about because you're so used to, you know, if you're a lawyer, you go online, you use Westlaw, you use LexisNexis to access the law. But in South Carolina, the print volumes of the Code of Laws, the Acts and Joint Resolutions, those are considered the official laws. And so even if you are able to access most of your information online, the official law of South Carolina is in those print volumes. So Acts and Joint Resolutions, you got a cute little picture of it down there. The various volumes of the acts, and those are the early acts. Those came from the early 1900s, and you see how nice and skinny those volumes are. As you go further and further forward in time, the volumes get bigger and bigger, and then you get multi-volumes per year. So there's a lot of them. Any bills passed by the General Assembly, once they've passed the General Assembly, governor signs them, they get an act number, and they're published in the annual volumes of the Acts and Joint Resolutions. And those are the official laws of South Carolina. And of course, most acts will be covering a particular topic. They'll be covering, you know, they can be short, they can be long. Just think about some of the longer acts, case in point, the annual appropriation bill that gets passed. That thing is hundreds of pages long. If you contact us and say, oh, I would like a copy of the Appropriation Act from 2000, we're like, well, that's going to be a little difficult to copy. We'll have to see if we can narrow that down. Very long. Most acts generally don't cover that many pages, and some of them can be as short as a single paragraph, and that's how targeted they can be. And the specific historical aspect of the acts is going back to a part of South Carolina history. And the thing most people tend to forget now is that before 1975, the General Assembly basically ran local government. They did the budgets for local government. They did, you know, they even chose, you know, how much the salary local government officials, municipal, county, city, basically everything that was done at the local level had to be approved in the General Assembly. And so when you look at any of these volumes before 1975, you're going to see a very large section that dealt specifically with local government issues, you know, the budgets, street projects, things as simple as putting in streetlights, you know, things that today you're like, why on earth was that being handled by the General Assembly? And it is because basically General Assembly ran everything at the local level. What changed that was the Home Rule Act in 1975. When, I mean, 1975, that is not that long ago. So you had, you know, a period of centuries when basically everything that happened in local level in South Carolina was pretty much being run here in Columbia by the General Assembly. So a lot of these things, town budgets, the street projects, lots of local history can be found in looking at those local acts. This would include things like the chartering of cities. You know, so if you're doing a local history project, you know, when was our city chartered? And we've had a couple of reference questions in the past where the city record said that they were chartered in one year, and then we look at what the charter said in the Acts and Joint Resolutions, and they give a different year. And sometimes it means that the city has got their date wrong. It also could mean something else happened. So that's part of your interesting historical project when you're doing a family history or trying to figure out what's going on with your local city. Acts are also called session laws. So it's the acts and joint resolutions, but basically the act as passed is considered the session law. And so when you look at the acts, you can actually see the history of a current law or the origin of a town or a particular county or a company. Now, they don't do it now, but for a considerable part of South Carolina history, if you wanted to start up a corporation or a large business in South Carolina, it had to be incorporated or chartered by the General Assembly. So many of the large companies, especially true with things like canal projects, railroad companies, all of these companies had to be chartered at the state level. And so an act would actually be passed to charter that particular company. So that gives you a nice little history of when it started. It would also give you some details on the company that may not be currently available. And also things like the origin of a county. A lot of people, you look at the map of South Carolina today and you're like, well, that's how it's always been. Well, no, the counties in South Carolina have changed considerably over the years. We've actually got a book in our collection, which is an atlas of historical county boundaries for South Carolina. And it's really fascinating to look through that and see how things have changed through the years. And every time there is a change in a local boundary, it usually ends up somewhere in the acts. And example of that, early 1900s, there was no Calhoun County. And what happened was the property owners that lived in that area got tired of traipsing. They were mostly part of Lexington County. They got tired of traipsing from St. Matthews all the way to the city of Lexington to get their business done. So they petitioned the General Assembly and they were able to get a separate county made from parts of Orangeburg and Lexington County. So, I mean, that's less than 100 years ago for the most part. When you're searching for the acts, and these will be in the print volumes, there's two ways of searching. And you really have, if you're searching for like the charter, a particular act, you really need to know the year and basically the subject. When you actually pull these volumes out, they're arranged chronologically. And so flipping through the volume, you're basically looking as the acts were passed during that particular session of the General Assembly. So there is a subject index in each volume, but it is a very, very basic index and isn't terribly useful for finding very, very detailed information about what particular act you're looking for. The most helpful thing to do is to actually have a citation from another source. And a citation would give you the year and the volume number and the act that you're looking for. Interesting little tidbit here. And this is a problem that we run into when we have people contact us, usually from out of state. They're trying to find, they've got a reference to a South Carolina law, and they may possibly have found that maybe at their local law library, they have a copy of these. They can't find it in the volume. Like, why can't I find this? Before the mid 70s, when you actually found the citation to an act, the citation would give you the year, that's basic, and it would also give you the volume number of the acts. But the last figure in the example I have here, 1922, 32, 840, you would think that the 840 refers to the number of the act. But before the mid 70s, that number did not refer to the act number. It referred to the page number that the act appeared on. And so you'd be flipping through the volumes like, where is Act 840? There is no Act 840. They don't go that high. It's referring to the page number. And again, that goes back to the fact that the print volumes of the acts and joint resolutions, and also the print volumes of the Code of Laws, is considered the official law. And that's why they use the page number. That fortunately has changed. You look at anything that's going to be late 70s forward, they're going to actually give you the act number. That makes it much easier. And the other reason they also do that is so many people now are referring to things in the online resources, and that's where page number just doesn't work. But that's something to remember. If you have a citation and it's before the mid-70s, that number is very likely referring to a page number and not an act number. And one thing that we are working on here at the State Library to make searching the acts and joint resolutions easier is that we are involved in a project to digitize all of these volumes of the acts and joint resolutions. There are scattered volumes available online through various resources, but not the entire set. And hopefully by the time in a couple of years when we get all that done, you'll be able to go in, you can search by keyword, you can search by number. It will make searching the acts and joint resolutions so much easier. And even better, you won't have to pay to do it. It'll all be free. Helpful for us too. So what sort of things do you find in the acts? What I did here was I took a snip from the 1905 acts volume. And I mentioned that there are a lot of local type legislation that appears in the acts, and things that would also be useful for local history, also for legal research as well. This is the city of Jefferson, South Carolina. They were chartered in 1904. This is a very small one, and I did that just so it would fit on the page. Most of these acts that charter a particular city go on for several paragraphs, because you see here, it gives a description. One of the primary things that's mentioned in a charter for a city or town is basically where it is and how much territory it covers. And so what you see here, corporate limits, 1 mile in every direction, and a stone in the middle of Camden and Charlotte Road. Now, 1904, that stone was there, but is it there now? So there's your historical research. What happened to that stone? Where did it go? Do we know what the actual limits of the city are now? So this can also have legal implications for any dispute, current dispute on where the actual city limits are. One of the points they give is the Jefferson Baptist Church. Is the church there anymore? So these are things that you have to look at. And when you look at some of the larger cities, just below this, which I didn't include here, was the city of North Augusta. And they had 3 paragraphs describing exactly what territory it covered. So interesting little tidbits that you can find in the acts and joint resolutions. Now, the acts and joint resolutions are the laws as they're passed by the General Assembly, and they're done annually. But what most people are familiar with the laws is the South Carolina Code of Laws. And the most current one, I got a little picture of it down there at the bottom of the screen, the nice blue and red and black volumes that you see in every lawyer's office. And I will say that if you see a set in a lawyer's office that looks pristine, it's probably the set they just use for show. By the time you finish pulling it out, adding all the supplements to it, it gets kind of messy looking. So the one, if you see one in a lawyer's office that's all nice and pretty, that's the one they do for show, and the one they actually use in their practice is probably somewhere in the back. But the Code of Laws is basically taking all the acts that you see in the volumes of the acts and rearranging them by subject and organized into title, chapter, and section as official statutes. And so you've got the title, the chapter, and section. And an interesting thing about the acts that as they're passed is that that act could actually be split up into several different volumes of the Code of Laws, depending on what specific subject they're covering. And so just because an act is passed does not mean it's going to be put in one piece into the Code of Laws. The most current version of the Code of Laws is the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, and the annotated version is the one that you'll see the most. And the annotations, of course, is what you need to use to track any changes in those laws. 1976 is the latest, what they call a codification. And there are a number of earlier versions of the Code of Laws. The annotations that they have cover each section. You know, what changed? Did this change? What law was passed that changed this section? And often in the official version, the Code of Law is annotated. It'll also include mentions of cases. The state library is not a really good resource for case law. We have a couple of online resources that might be helpful. I'll mention those at the end. But again, this printed set is considered the official law in South Carolina, regardless of what you'll find online. Code of Laws can be searched by subject. Unlike the Acts and Joint Resolutions, the South Carolina Code of Laws has a really good subject index. They have a two-volume subject index. The easiest way, of course, to locate a particular law is to have a citation from some other source. And citations are the basic format, title, chapter, and section. So example here, Title 46, Chapter 29, Section 10. That refers to Title 46, which covers the subject of agriculture. Chapter 29, which is specifically cotton. And Section 10, which is cotton standards. Actually, yeah, you may not realize this, but there's actually codified standards for cotton. What makes it difficult is that the different codifications of the law use different citation formats. And when you're looking at those annotations that appear under each section for various changes in the law, what you have to figure out is which one is this, which particular citation is this referring to? Is it referring to the 1952? Is it referring to the 1940 Code of Laws? The earliest version of the Code of Laws was published in 1873. And up until about this current 1976 version of the Code of Laws, new versions of the code were published about every 10 years. And every time they published a new version of the code, the citation method changed. So you have to know at least, let's see, I think there's been about 7 or 8 different versions of the code. And so you have to learn a new different system for each one to figure out how to look up something in that particular version of the code. Before 1873, the laws of South Carolina, they were not codified. So the way you're used to looking up laws now in the South Carolina Code of Laws was very different. Basically, a volume of South Carolina law was a list of acts, act by act, several different publications. And so when you pulled out a law book before 1873, it was not this nice codified version arranged by subject that you see now. It was basically a chronological listing of each act as they were passed. So made a very different way of doing legal research. You had to really know the various laws of South Carolina to know how to find them. The statutes at large of South Carolina it's a 13-volume set, which actually took all the acts that had been existing up until 1866 and put them together into this nice 13-volume set, wonderful index to it, although still not as good as we would like it to be. And so it covers colonial law to just after the Civil War. And by colonial law, of course, that means that, the Lord's proprietor, the colony of South Carolina, they still had laws that they passed, and these were all into effect actually up through the forming of the state and the United States. So these are very important volumes during that time period. Fortunately, they have all been digitized, but we do have the volumes here at the library as well. So what other types of things can you find in there? So the statutes at large, the early volumes of the South Carolina laws, they're used for legal research, but what we find that they're used for more often is for historical research. Again, things like family history, local history of a particular town or city or county. I have an example here, and it's from a 1796 act. It's from I think, let's see, volume 9 of the statutes at large. The town of Chatham in Chesterfield County, an act, and you notice they actually put a bunch of things together in these early acts, and basically to establish a ferry on the Great PD River. Remember, and things like, for those of you here in Columbia, you got Garner's Ferry Road. If you're living in any city or town that has a road that has the word ferry in it, more than likely there was some point on the river where there was a ferry crossing, because bridges were not really a thing very early in South Carolina history. It was much easier to do and cheaper to do a ferry. It's only really in the last 150 years that they've had a lot better technology to build bridges that don't get washed away in every flood. So this particular act reestablished a ferry service on the Great PD River. And this is just a snip. It actually goes on for about another full page and talks about who's responsible, where it is. And even further down, it actually tells you how much you could charge, how much you charge per cow, how much you charge per horse, how much you charge per person. I got very, very specific in these particular acts, especially for ferries and other transportation services. So this is very interesting, and it's also a way you can cross-reference some other resources, because it mentions here at the plantation of Elizabeth Bishop. Is that plantation still standing? Where was it? So this is also a way of tracking where particular locations were, because when they actually specified the location of a particular service, a road, they used a lot of landmarks. And these landmarks may no longer exist, but if you're trying to track where they were, this can be a useful resource. And something else that's really interesting from a historical viewpoint is the statutes at large also show that lots of South Carolina laws, and this is true basically for any of the original 13 states and lots of territories as well. Most of our laws came from British common law. We didn't rewrite the laws from scratch when the colonies were formed. We basically took what we knew and brought them over with us. So British common law. And volume 2 of the statutes at large actually has an entire section, English statutes made of force. So British common law, all put in there. And this particular section that I include here, this is from 1712. And this is basically the law for pirates. And this is just a little snip. And talks about, which persons shall, and there you go. You see the oaths of 12 good and lawful inhabitants. There's your 12 people on a jury. And any treasons, felonies, manslaughters, all their lovely stuff. But here's a little legal trivia. If you look up in the little top here where it gives a citation, 1536, the year 1536, it refers to something called H8. You know, like H8. When I first saw this, it took me a while to figure it out. This is referring to King Henry VIII, laws made during his reign. And you can actually see the references in British common law generally are to the particular reign of a king or queen. So you'll see references to H7, H8, also to ED, that would be Edward, and the various kings of that name. So very interesting when you look at this and you see how much has come from England and how it has become part of our laws. And it's just fun to read these and see. And you read this, 12 good and lawful inhabitants, like, 12 members of a jury. It's a very ancient, well, I shouldn't say ancient, 1536, yeah, I think that qualifies as ancient. That's carried over from quite some time ago. Okay, so that's the Acts and Joint Resolutions and the Code of Laws. One of the other primary resources that we have here for doing research are the House and Senate journals. So the South Carolina House of Representatives and the South Carolina Senate publish journals of their proceedings. And these are daily journals. And currently, if you want to know what's going on day by day when they're in session, they do have it on their website. I'll mention that a little bit later. And also talks about what's going on in the House and Senate, who was attending at the time, the votes, any other actions taken. You can use the journals to research voting history of bills, also to find out whether or not a report was published, because generally what happens when a bill is introduced in the House or Senate is they might talk about it a bit, but almost inevitably it ends up in some committee or other. And oftentimes the committee will issue a report. What many people are confused about is, and this probably has more to do with the fact that they're confusing the House and Senate journals with something like the US Congress, the publication they put out called the Congressional Record. The Congressional Record is a verbatim account of everything that goes on in the US Congress, in the House of Representatives, the US House of Representatives, and the US Senate. And it's a wonderful resource for everything that goes on there. The House and Senate, the South Carolina House and Senate journals are more like the minutes to a meeting. They do not have a verbatim account on what is spoken or debated on the floor. So it's, like I said, again, just similar to the minutes of a meeting. Every now and then you will find an inclusion of a speech in there. Almost always when they have a particular person visiting that's making a speech to the House or Senate, or when they have a, they often do publish the messages from the governor. Those will be published in there. But if you want to know, who said what on the House and Senate floor, it's not in the House and Senate journals. So what can you use them for? Journals are indexed by subject and by bill number. It's very useful for finding out the day-to-day progress of bills through the House, through the Senate. You may not know what was said about it, but you'll know that when it goes to committee, when it comes out of committee, when it's read in the House and Senate, the first reading, the second reading, the third reading. And at the very least, you'll get to be able to track what's going on. Did it pass? Did it not? Did it get sent to committee? Did it stay in committee? So newer reports, and something to remember, the reports that they mention are also seldom included. And that's an extremely frustrating fact. So you're sitting there, it's like report, report, report. Where are these reports? The newer reports will be kept by the committee responsible. So the House Judiciary Committee, they do a lot of reports. For the more recent ones, they keep up with those, and you can contact the committee. I have found that in the last couple of years, each committee now has their own webpage, and many of them are getting better and better at posting those reports on their website. So for the new reports, they're slowly migrating online. Older reports, we generally don't have them here. We have some, but most of them end up at the South Carolina State Archives. And so if you're looking for a report that the committee no longer holds, it's probably been sent to the archives, and you'll have to head over there to do some research because very few of them have been digitized. Another useful feature of the journals is that it includes a list of the senators and representatives and what committees they served on. There are other resources for that, but it's a nice, convenient one-stop place to look them up. One thing that the House and Senate journals are not good for is for the good old legislative intent. Many people that are researching legislation are taking a look at the House and Senate journals and hoping, why did they pass this particular piece of legislation? Why did they actually make these changes? It's very difficult to find that out through the House and Senate journals because you don't know what was going on. You just know that they voted on it. They returned it to committee. They said they're going to make some changes in it. And you're just kind of left struggling for what exactly they were doing. Legislative intent is difficult to find out in South Carolina because so little is recorded about what goes on in the House and Senate floor. And you almost always have to turn to other resources like newspapers to find out what was going on and what they were doing with a particular piece of legislation. Now that I've talked about some of these really basic resources, how do you access them? Now, most of what we covered is print volumes. And of course, you're always welcome to visit the state library. Now, something that is unique to the state library and is extremely useful is that lots of these volumes, we do a very good job of keeping multiple volumes of anything South Carolina related. We don't have multiple volumes for anything, but for those that we do, in many cases, not always, they can be checked out. So let's say that you want to look at the year 2000, well, actually 2000 would be online. Let's say 1975 Appropriations Act. That's not yet online. We haven't digitized that. And probably you don't really want to sit there and try to copy all, let's see, probably runs 300 or 400 pages minimum. Some of them run closer to 1,000 pages for the Appropriations Act. In many cases, you'd be able to check out the volume that has that in it. And to do that, you would just apply for a state library card. Any South Carolina resident 18 or over can get a state library card. You can even apply for it online. There's a link on our website. Scanning and copying is available here in the building. But remember, you don't actually have to visit the library. That's probably a good thing because once USC is in session, it's almost impossible to find a parking place anywhere around here. And so if you are intending to visit the state library, remember that you probably will have difficulty finding a little bit of parking. Unfortunately, we don't have any visitor parking. It is all street parking. But you don't have to visit us. If you have a research question, if you have a particular act you're trying to find, you have a citation, but you can't find it online, just contact us, email us, call us. You can also use, we have a chat service you can also use, and we'll see what we can do for you. We can't do legal research. If you ask us, we want to know why we want to know, what type of laws are available on this particular subject. We really can't help you with that. That's considered legal research, and that's something that the lawyers like to reserve for themselves. But if you have any sort of citation or a particular name that you're looking for, we can do our best to see what we can find in our collection and let you know what's available. So don't have to come here. We'll do our best to find a lot of these things. We get questions all the time from law firms across the country that are looking for previous versions of the South Carolina codes. And it's very important because if you're on a court case that's based on an incident that happened years ago, or a civil case where it's regarding something that was based on a law that's no longer current, what you want is a copy of the law as it was during that particular year. And that is very difficult to find online, especially if it's older than about 10 or 15 years. And that's something that we do on a regular basis, is to get a copy of laws, something that appeared, what was it in 1955? We can look that up, usually make a copy of it, scan it, and email it to you. So that's one of the things that's probably the most used in our collection with the resources that we have. So remember, you don't have to visit. You can always send your research question to us. If there's something that we can't answer, we'll let you know, and we'll see if we can find another resource, another organization for you to contact to get that information. Okay, that was all the print resources. Now, it was just a basic summary of what we have. To do a really, truly good overview of the print sources we have, we'd be here all day and maybe for a couple of weeks. So that was just a basic overview. But for those that are looking for more current information, and by current, I mean for the last couple of decades, the South Carolina State House website has gotten better and better at putting that information on their website. And at the very end, I'll show you a couple of screenshots of that. But the scstatehouse.gov website, it has the acts and joint resolutions, and they're available back for the most part to 1980. And so if you're looking for an act that was published in 1985, generally you can look that up online. You can also get the legislative history that goes along with it. It's got the full text to the South Carolina Code of Laws, and the version that they have available also has some basic annotations. And that's something that is a new feature. They only added that in the last couple of years. So you can actually track back where the changes have been made. And also a very new feature is previous versions of the code, although it only goes back to 2020. So if you want to know what a particular section of the Code of Laws was, you know what it is now in 2022, but actually that's wrong. It's actually previous versions of the code back to 2000. Oh, I'll need to correct that. I am sorry about that. Those numbers just went a little bit further. Yeah, previous versions of the code, it's actually back to 2000. So if you, I need to write myself a note on that. I apologize for that. All those 2s and 0s just really wanted to come out. But previous versions, if you want to know what a code section was like just maybe 10 years ago, you can do that. There's actually a link to it on the UC State House website. And that's, again, is just the plain text version that they have available, but it's still a nice, useful feature. And some of that information is available in some of the fee-based services like Westlaw. Very expensive. So this is a nice little feature. The House journals that they have those House journals back to 1985. The Senate journals are back to 1990. And being electronic, probably one of the most useful features about the electronic versions is that they're all searchable. Now, they're keyword searchable, and that's much better than trying to drag your way through the index. That's not so great. Current committee reports, again, each committee now has their own little page on the State House website. And one of the nice things too about not just having their reports posted is for the past 10 to 15 years, the State House has done a really good job of recording videos of their proceedings. And a significant number of those are now linked on the committee websites, General Assembly website. It's not nearly as sophisticated as the federal C-SPAN service, but it's certainly better than nothing. And for at least the period of time it covers, it's your best way of finding out the verbatim account of what actually happened on the House and Senate floors or in the various committees. And it also has a base, of course, the State House website has a directory of the members, the House and the senators and the representatives also the various officers and all their contact information. So that's probably the most useful resource for researching current legislation. For more detailed information on legal research, the USC School of Law, right across the street from us, has a lovely guide called South Carolina Legal Resources on their website. I got the link right there. It's a list of legal resources that are available to the public. Also includes information on what services they offer. Yeah, you can't go to the law library and have them do legal research for you. But if you have citations, they will be happy to point out where you can go and find them. They have the full text to the South Carolina Code of Laws there at the library, but they also have digitized previous versions of the code, including those statutes at large that have all kinds of the interesting information, including the links to the British common law, also links to how to research local government laws and case law resources. That's something that we don't have that much of here at the state library in terms of print resources. We do have a brand new database called FastCase that does include cases on it, and that's linked on our A to Z list of databases. And you can take a look at that and see the information that's available there. It has both federal and state, and relatively easy to use, but it does help to have a little bit of a background in legal research before you try tackling the FastCase. Another reference resource that's USC School of Law puts out is a service they call Circuit Riders. And this is actually where they provide training to non-lawyers in how to do legal research. The Circuit Riders page is a multi-part page where they cover in detail federal and state laws and regulations and how to research them and where you can find them both online and what's available in print. But if you are really into learning how to do legal research, they also did, and this was something that they did during the first year of the pandemic in 2020, they did a 5-part webinar series on legal research in South Carolina. And so that covers probably a good 7 to 8 hours of just how to do legal research. And it's again on the Circuit Riders page, you got the link up there. And if you are at all interested in learning more details about doing legal research, I highly recommend viewing that webinar series. They have it recorded, and lots of interesting things that they point out about South Carolina laws that I can't possibly cover in a 1-hour session. But they have probably really good, and they also have, if you go to the School of Law website, especially the law library, they also have a chat service that you don't have to be a student to use, and that's especially helpful if you have a sticky citation reference that you can't figure out. Now, we can try helping you as well, but you can also try contacting them, and usually they can figure it out. They did help me with that H8, but I struggled with when I first saw it. And it's like, they were like, oh, it's Henry. And I'm like, Henry? Henry who? Oh, Henry VIII. Okay, well, yeah, I guess he had something to do with our laws after all. That's the basics of what we have. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend about 5 minutes actually showing you some screenshots of these online resources. So I talked about them, but kind of hard to imagine them when I'm just talking about them. Stop sharing that. And share screen. Where's my Firefox? There's my Firefox. Okay. What you should be seeing now is the scstatehouse.gov website, the South Carolina legislature. And the House, the Senate, there are, oh yeah, and they have a mobile app now, which they just started advertising that. So you can actually put all this information on your phone and stare at laws on your phone. But House and Senate representatives, it has the calendars, it has who's on the committees, it has links to the journals. You'll see that it has links to South Carolina laws, the acts, code of regulations. I didn't really cover the code of regulations, but just like federal law, South Carolina, in addition to the laws, they also have a code of regulations, which we have the previous versions of those as well in print if you're looking for the history of a particular regulation. All sorts of different resources. Also, when you take a look over here at the various research resources, the archives, let's see, where is it? Visiting State House. And the archives, they have, bring it up here. You know, I mentioned the acts and joint resolutions, the budgets. They actually have copies of the budgets from a good number of years back. So that might actually give you what you're looking for. It also has the video archives. And again, it's, like I said, the House and Senate journals don't actually have the verbatim account of what happens. But if you want to see particular committee meetings, of course, there's more available for the recent meetings and the recent events at the House and Senate. The further back you go, the scarcer they become. And even though they listed all the way back here to 75, there's actually very few bits and pieces available that far back. But things like 2000, oops, not bad. But looking at all video archives, yeah. So let's see, 2013. They've actually got recordings of that you can watch and get a little bit more detail about what was going on with a particular piece of legislation. Back. Let's see, go to House. But lots of information available here. Some other resources that are also useful. Let's see, legislature. Whoops. Come on, where is? Okay. Whoops, come back here. Hang on one second.
Thanks, Don. That was a wonderful talk. I learned a lot from everything you said. We have a few more minutes if anybody has questions while you're pulling that next item up. And thanks, Ms. McFadden, for the question about FastCase. I sent the link out and that you can get remote access to it. I could also share the State Library application page if you like that.
Circuit writers. There we go, circuit writers. Okay. I just want to show the circuit writers page. Let me do that. Let's see, where are we? Share screen, there we go. Okay, there we go, circuit writers page. It was hiding from me. This is the University of South Carolina, the School of Law. This is what they call circuit writers. This is a program that they do, which is the basic legal research training. And you'll see that they cover constitutions, legal system, US legal system, South Carolina legal. And it also talks about how to find cases, find regulations, other resources. But this is what I was referring to here. This 5-part legal resource series. And this is a truly comprehensive, short of actually attending law school or getting paralegal training or taking an actual official legal research course. This is probably one of the most comprehensive resources that you're going to find on how to actually research law in South Carolina, also federal laws. So if you want to go beyond what this little session has covered, this is probably going to be one of your best resources. Also fascinating to look through what resources are available. Compared to when I started here at the State Library, over 20 years ago, what's now available online is just amazing. And some of this stuff is going to be, fee-based. It's very few people that are going to be able to afford their own copy of their own subscription to Westlaw. But a lot of what you're looking for is going to be available here in some of these free resources. And one way or the other, you'll be able to get access to the legal resources that you need. Oh, and thank you for that. No, yeah, the State House website, you can sign up for the legislative alerts, what meetings are happening. So you don't have to dig through all that stuff that's on their website. That alerts is really, really useful. Yeah, all these things that unfortunately I don't have time to cover, but yeah, spend some time looking at that State House website. They designed it to actually help people find out information on what's going on in the General Assembly and also with South Carolina laws, and they do a really good job of it. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah.
We also have those legislative manuals that go back to World War I era. And
Yeah.
people use those a lot. So.
Yeah, we finally digitized the legislative manual is the annual publication that lists who's who in the House and Senate, little short bios, lots of other information that you wouldn't think can fit all in that one compact little volume. And we've got it digitized going back to the early 1900s. So that's in our digital collections. And hopefully the acts and joint resolutions will be added to that fairly soon, probably about another year or two. Any other questions? That sounds like it's lunchtime to me. Okay. Okay.
And like you said, that's really an introduction because there's gives you an idea what we have, and there's so much more that we could share. So please contact us.
Yes.
Anytime.
This is just the overview. So if you have any questions, contact us. That in the presentation, again, you can download somewhere in the chat, several places in the chat, we've got the handout you can download. And that way you can, at least get a basic idea about what we're talking about, what's available here. Not everybody gets excited with legislative resources, but we're reference librarians, so we do. So we're always happy to help you with what we have. I think Virginia just posted some of what's in our state documents online depository. We are digitizing things fast and furious. So hopefully we'll get more and more online, and we won't need to see you come to the library, but I'm sure you'll contact us because whatever you find online sometimes doesn't always make sense. Very true with laws. Okay.
I'll put our reference email too, so you can always email us. If you're not in Columbia and can stop by, you can always call. That's on the contact page. You can email. We have a virtual book appointment service. So if you're farther out and want to do an appointment one-on-one like Zoom, we can help you that way and get started on the research and tell you what's possible.
You got anything else, Virginia?
I think that's it. I was just going to put our reference, I think I did it right, reference email that you may also contact us in addition to touching on that contacts page. Yep.
Just, email us at reference. And all sorts of interest. Yeah, because when you look at when you look at those law resources, it's, it's like, what were they doing? Why did they pass these laws? And it's always fascinating to read them and like, what was going on at that time. It's definitely a reflection of what's going on in the history of the state at that particular time. So in addition to just plain legal research, it's just fascinating to look at.
Mhm. And I'd say, like you were saying, it's fun as a reference librarian to get to use these resources. So every time somebody has a question, it gives us a chance to go in there and look and learn something new and some interesting aspect of history. And Bill Dragowski is at DOT, and you used one of the examples about a ferry that was created, and that could be DOT research, archaeological research that somebody might do for some of these features. It was a great example. Great. If give you another couple 30 seconds for questions. Otherwise, we're probably gonna finish for the day, and we will upload this to our State Library YouTube page. So you're always welcome to come back and see it again and share it with somebody else and come visit us. All right. A good time to say goodbye.
Time to go eat
Tom,
lunch.
this was wonderful.
Yeah, time to go eat lunch. If you ate lunch during the meeting, that's just great. I hope it didn't disturb your digestion.
That was good.
Okay.
Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.